I applaud the Black Lives Matter movement so long as it maintains peacefulness. We must not allow lawlessness to come here. I don't want to see our area become like Seattle.
Hi, I'm Glenn Morgan, back with We the Governed, and thank you for joining me today. I'm really honored to be here interviewing Rey Reynolds, a candidate for the 49th Legislative District in Vancouver, Washington, and a longtime law enforcement officer locally. And Rey, it is so good to see you here today, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Glenn, thank you for having me today. I'm excited about this interview. I've been looking forward to it. And I'm hoping all your viewers will be able to have a better perspective as to who I am and why it's important that we win the 49th District Senate seat.
When we were originally talking about doing this interview, this is before some of the recent craziness has actually popped up. Can you just speak to that? Because I know we're so close in Vancouver, right across the river from Portland. The craziness going on in Seattle, as we're interviewing right now, where there's basically taking over blocks in Seattle. Can you just, as a law enforcement officer and somebody who has some background in this area, what are your thoughts on that? And knowing you're running for the state Senate as well, and probably going to have an influence in policy.
Glenn, that is a great question, and I take that question very seriously because it is one of the most serious things that is happening that I've ever seen happen, and in this area and in this country. I see what's happening in Portland with the lawlessness that is going on down there. Many officers have been injured. One of our officers was stabbed with a knife that was placed on the tip of an umbrella. We've had officers injured with rocks and that thing going on. And in Seattle, incredibly, what I heard, and I hope it's wrong, but I've heard that at least 6 blocks have been taken over by an Antifa, and that they are now forcing different concessions from different areas. Such lawlessness cannot be allowed. You know, that is the whole issue of appeasement has never worked. It did not work in Europe. People allowed the Kristall Nacht to go on, or the breaking of glass, where they went in and destroyed storefronts and businesses. Are we repeating history again? To allow such activity, to allow such lawlessness, will not stop lawlessness. It will only increase in intensity, as is the case in Seattle right now. Here in Vancouver, we must not allow it. Glenn, that must not be allowed to happen. It does not mean that we go off and do something rude and obnoxious. The incident that occurred in Minneapolis was tragic beyond measure. The killing of a man for any reason, especially in that situation, showed complete disregard for the life of that man, showed disregard for policy, disregard for the just human decency. I have an expression, Glenn, that I call compassionate accountability. Compassion for situations where we have to show compassion. Some of our homeless, the people that are hurting. Someone commits a crime because they're hungry, they're stealing. We show compassion. And all officers understand that issue of compassion. We're not robots. Someone steals, that doesn't necessarily mean he has to go to jail. Why did it happen? We show compassion. That's key. But there's also the other part, and that's accountability. We must not allow people to continue lawless behavior and there be no accountability for it, in the hopes that it will stop, in the hopes that maybe it won't go anywhere. Glenn, it will not stop. It is important for us as a community, a Vancouver community. I've served this area for 33 years, and we've come up with great solutions to a lot of problems, including the homeless ones, which I would like to speak to later. But this most important issue is we must not allow lawlessness to come here. We must, as a community, not different factions, not black, not white, not any other thing. We come together as a community, regardless of political beliefs at all. If we value and love our community, and I love Vancouver, if we value it, and I believe everyone here does, then we must do everything we can to maintain our distance to maintain that outside of our boundaries. We can't control what's going on in Portland. We can't control what's happening up in Seattle. But we can control what happens here. And I work with some of the finest law enforcement officers in the country. There is none. I do not believe there's any better. Portland, Seattle, none of them can compare with the officers and the men and women that serve this community. And we've had a tremendous relationship with this community. Working with PAL and the different mentoring that we're doing. As a school resource, I was a school resource officer at various schools around the area, Mountain View, Evergreen, Union. There's mentoring that goes in there. The relationships we've built, a lot of our officers even adopt schools. And I go up and we read at the different schools. This is all how we've built a tremendous relationship with our area. To allow it to be destroyed, we just simply can't do that.
Which seems to be the main focus of a lot of these protests, is to draw a very sharp division between law enforcement and the community. And they may be trying to use racial arguments or some other argument to do that. Can you address that as a law enforcement officer and as somebody who's probably been influenced by the Black Lives Matter whole movement? What's your perspective on that?
I definitely have been. And again, looking at Black Lives Matter and where it's at, the issue that they're trying to cover, as I said earlier, is a valid issue. That incident should not have happened. And every single one of those officers that were involved must be held accountable. If we were to not allow it, then it would make it worse. However, the very basis right now of some of the things that have been said, I guard the Black Lives Matter protests. That is one of my jobs. I applaud the peaceful protests. I applaud it because it's our First Amendment right, Glenn. That has to be protected. I applaud the Black Lives Matter movement so long as it maintains peacefulness. Language that is abusive language about any violence, I absolutely, if that is coming from the Black Lives Matter movement, where they using abusive language that is threatening and language that tries to draw the community to attack and or hurt police officers, that's unacceptable. And we must not allow it. You can say the language, but once you bring that kind of inflammatory language in, it brings in with it a potential for violence, right, as we saw in Dallas.
And I was listening to an interview or a video recently up in Seattle where the city council member was out there interviewing people, and you could hear behind her the protesters were demanding the police kill themselves, and just it was really nasty language, and that's the kind of stuff with between that and the storefronts being broken out and cars being burned, your perspective as a law enforcement officer, I mean that must just be terrible to see that kind of thing going on, but
yes. Glenn, it's absolutely terrifying to see that. Burning cars, threatening death, no. There's certain places in our existence as a civilization that we must say no. That doesn't mean we don't agree with it, that such egregious things have happened. That doesn't deny that there has been, racism in the past. That doesn't deny that there is some even current racism. None of that is being denied. But let me say this. America is the absolute pinnacle of civilization. I love this country. And I love the people. Many of my family, I have 6 kids. 4 of my sons serve in the military and will serve in the military. So I have a dog in this fight. Right. And many of the history of black people in general, as we support this wonderful country. Martin Luther King supported this country. He didn't hate this country. He loved this country because of the ideals. Yes, we may not get those ideals. We may not hit that perfection. But the ideals are what we shoot for. When you and I talk, I don't see Glenn, the white male, and you should not see Ray, the black male. You should see Ray and Glenn talking. You judge me by the content of my character, not by the color of my skin. What I say is what matters. See, that's where we're at. We must judge each other by the content of our character, and you can bring back those ideals. And America has those.
Now, you didn't originally grow up out here. You're from Chicago originally, I understand. Can you tell our listeners what brought you out to Washington State?
Well, as you know, growing up in Chicago was an experience in and of itself. Going to the schools down there, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I knew Leroy Brown, and it was an amazing place to grow up. I have most of my family is still there. At the time, it was more of almost a suburban type area that we grew up in. It was a wonderful time to grow up. There were some places that you and I know about. One of them was Cabrini Greens, which I was unfortunately happened to be up in that area a lot. But it was an experience growing up in Chicago, one that I really enjoyed, but it was something that I know I couldn't stay. I couldn't stay in Chicago. The environment there was so negative and became even more and more negative and became dangerous even back then. So now it was time for me to go. And so I decided, it's time for me to leave. And so from there, I went to University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, and I ended up getting a degree in biology and fish management. So I'm a fish biologist.
Perfect for Washington State. Yeah.
Yes, it is. But I'm not so much an environmentalist as I am a conservationist. There's a difference. In conservation, we want to do wise use of resources, not abuse, but wise use. And that's from the philosophy that I really like to look at, that it's a wise use philosophy on resources in general, and how we apply those resources, how we're going to use those resources, and what benefit those resources are to the people that live in the area. So coming up from Wisconsin, I decided after I got my degree, it was a lot of fun. I graduated, and was so excitement that up there in Wisconsin, we learned all the area. I worked in Wisconsin for a little while as a game warden in Wisconsin. What happened is I'm enjoying myself as a fish biologist, but then a game warden came up to me and said, why don't you come ride with me? It'll be fantastic, it'll be fun. I'm like, boring, police work. Went out one time, that was it. So I became a game warden, and I was up in Olympia. For all those Olympia people who I met, hello. And then also, but then I transferred down here to Vancouver. Okay. And that's where my career has been all the way up till like 1998, when back then they had a rift with the state. We had a financial problem. I'm sure that won't happen again.
Yeah, we're right in the middle of one. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to. So at that point, it caused me to say, well, I got to make a decision. I had the time on that I could stay, but they said, well, you got to move to Pacific County, and that means Astoria and Long Beach and all that. And I did that for like 8 months. I was without my lady, my lady Kathy. She's been with her for 28 years now, but I had 6 kids, and I did not want to move those kids. It was important to me that they not get moved from one place to the next place to the next place to the next place. And so I stayed there for, 7 to maybe 8 months. And I said, no, it's time. So I decided to apply to the Vancouver Police Department. Okay. And they graciously took me. And from there, I've been there ever since, serving in Vancouver.
Where you still are. So,
that's where I'm at now.
And I understand some of the time, and this is interesting to me just because I was on a school board, and I know we had brought in a school resource officer, and I understand that's been a job that you've held periodically in your position at the Vancouver Police Department. Can you explain how important that position is? Because I just know how important it was for us to bring one into our school district, and can you tell my listeners, what that job's like?
Glenn.
Yeah.
Glenn, that to me is probably one of the most important positions in any police department. When an officer comes into that school environment, the kids have an entirely different perspective of what a police officer is. The fear of police diminishes significantly, and they figure out something critical. And Glenn, that's probably the most important thing. They figure out that the police officer is not their enemy, that the police officer is not there just to arrest them, but the police officer is there to help them, to bring them into a better understanding of what's going on, and to hold them accountable when necessary. But it is, the position requires a special kind of person. that he or she has to have a feel for what these kids are about. And you got to learn to love them. Okay, you end up loving these kids, and they end up getting under your skin. There are times when you want to, but most of the times it's a time where you want to really show the kids that you love them, and then they reciprocate. If I can share just one little story. Sure. It was at Mountain View High School, and some of the kids that were there, it became a beautiful environment, just a fantastic relationship between kids and police. And my wife became ill, and it was a very serious illness. And I thought we were going to lose her. Several times we thought we were going to lose my lady. But so I was off. I had to take off some time to take care of the kids, and I was Mr. Mom at home taking care of the kids, and it was a very important time. Those kids put together, and it was right about Christmas, just so you know. So right about Christmas, those kids put together, without my knowledge, a drive to buy toys for my kids. And they also decided, you know what, we want to go get some snow for Officer Reynolds. Those kids arranged it. They went up to Mount Hood, somehow got 2 big trucks, loaded it with snow, drove to our residence here in Vancouver, and there was a football team, the kids, all of them showed up. They came, motorcycles showed up, and they showed up at the house, and they dumped all this snow out on our house. And all the kids shoveled it all over the place. They put everything there, and then they brought a truck. Hear me out, Glenn. They brought a truck, a full pickup truck that was filled with toys from the front to the back. And they brought a tree and unloaded this into my home. And all my kids were running around with just toys everywhere. It was one of the most stunning examples of how the relationship between a police officer and the students is so critical, and how the school resource officer is not only appreciated, but valued. And that whole experience completely changed my perspective of a number of things, and how the police can be of service to the community, and how the community can then reciprocate back. It was a powerful time.
And not only have you been a law enforcement officer, but now you're stepping into this race. You're running for Washington State Senate in the 49th Ledge District, and you're running as a Republican.
Yes.
Or independent Republican, I guess.
Yes,
and so can you explain your decision to run for Senate, what's motivated you to jump into this race, and what your goals are running to be in the Washington State Senate?
Well, like I said earlier, I've been in this area for 33 years now. And we've served in numerous capacities through CMAC, through different other organizations, and through schools. And I want to see this area not only just grow, I want to see it prosper. I want to see the schools prosper. I want to see the area prosper. I want prosperity to come to our area. Vancouver is a beautiful area, fantastic area, and I wanted to maintain it. I don't want to see our area become like Seattle. That was one of the reasons I ran. I believe that a lot of what's been going on up in Seattle, we've had to support a lot of those activities up there. I don't agree with it. We are not a vassal to Seattle. We are Vancouver. And this area is completely unique. We raise our families here. I've raised my children here. They've all started to go to college now. And then, of course, serving. This area is blessed, and I want to continue to see it blessed. I do not want us to be taking policies that benefit Seattle and forget about lovely Vancouver. I don't want to see policies that, when it comes to education, where we have people that are completely talking about bringing a degenerate form of teaching to teach our children, even down to the kindergarten level. No, that was one of the primary motivations for me.
The recent sex ed push that they had in Olympia, which was very controversial.
Very controversial.
And the movement to repeal it just succeeded with far more signatures than they needed. They just turned it in here the other day.
See, that should be a message to us potential legislators like myself and to others that are already there. that the people's view of things must be acknowledged. You may have special interests that are going to push that way, but it is not their children that we're talking. It is the parents' right to teach their children and to what goes into their minds, because the parent teaches. See, that's where another reason I ran, Glenn, to strengthen the family. The family. That's what's important here in Vancouver, because family values and being out there with the family is critical. Glenn, here in Vancouver, we have parades. Now, some people say that's not a big deal. Glenn, it's huge. Huge. It brings the community together. And families come out, they wave flags. I had the privilege of standing next to a World War II survivor. He had his walker, and when the flag came by, he stopped. He let go of his walker, and he saluted. That's Vancouver. That's why I'm running. Not just running because it's a cool thing to do. It's to maintain what is precious and wonderful about Vancouver. And of course, I want to also run because so many people are talking about this homeless issue.
Right.
All right?
Yeah, which has been big in the news lately.
It's been huge.
Yep.
And there's so much talk about it. But Glenn, have you been to Seattle?
I have. Unfortunately, yeah, and it's a disaster.
It's a disaster.
Yep.
There are people in the streets. There's things that are happening that are unacceptable. And that is trying to move here. That's unacceptable. Again, what did I say about compassion and accountability? We must be compassionate. We can't, people living on the streets, we can't say, well, they just need to live on the street and then, hand them $1 or $2 and then say, oh, that's good enough. I did my part. No, that's not Vancouver. Vancouver, we can come together as a community, and we have solutions. And we have solutions that are not just a theory, but that work. Whatever's been going up in Seattle doesn't work. Whatever's been going on in Portland doesn't work. But what will go on here in Vancouver is working. And it works for several reasons. If you don't mind, can I cover a little bit of that?
Yeah, please tell me why. And in fact, I would say that I think our listeners would be very interested in any message you would have as to why you're running for office. So I think this is very helpful.
I believe that we have solutions here. And one of them, the solutions is what we call the net. The net is a project where because many times we've just been saying, okay, someone sleeping in someone's front yard. Who do they call? They call the police. And then they put the burden on the police. Well, it's not the police's job to solve homelessness.
Right.
It's not. And we've said, well, then in that case, call CPS or call who else? Well, the net has to do with the Vancouver community. What we do in the net is we bring together the police, we bring together mental health professionals, we bring together employers, we bring together anybody who's interested in trying to help the homeless. If you're interested in helping the homeless, we want you. If you're interested in doing anything, we want you. Because the theory is this. We sometimes ask, what can I do? Well, the question is not, let's reword it, kind of do a Kennedy on you. It's not what your government can do for you. What can you do for the country? What can you do for Vancouver to prevent the problem of homelessness? You individually. And so what we've done is we've integrated people that want to help. Businesses have come alongside us. People have come alongside us. And we ask, and we then get it on the phone and say, all right, here's a situation on an individual basis, one person at a time.
Right.
And then those people then come together as a group on the phone in real time. And we say, all right, Glenn, you've been homeless for about a month now. What can we do to help you get off the street, Glenn? What can we help you to not have to live like this? And then if it's a mental health issue, we have mental health professionals who are listening in and can say, oh, yeah, that's what we can do. He needs this, a service. And then also we can say, well, someone said, I have a place where we can stay. And we have people who have actually gone and stayed at different places. Clean Streets here in Vancouver is a wonderful organization that has provided rooms and homes for homeless people that were just out there, that they were a part of the net. We have some awesome businesses that have hired these homeless people and given them jobs. So what does the net do? It allows everyone to get involved, and not just what can you do, is what will you do? And in Vancouver, we ask ourselves, this is what I will do. I will provide this help. I will, and then as a group and in real time, we solve that individual problem. You say, well, Ray, there's hundreds of them. That's right. But each one deserves compassionate accountability. And then once you do all that, you see what you can help. There are those that choose not to be helped. There are those that just want to live on the streets in freedom. Those people, that's fine. If that's what you choose, then you're not homeless. You're houseless, but you're not homeless. And those people, you can give as many services as you can and work with them, but they still need to be held to accountability. What are the laws of the area? In this area, you're allowed to camp in some of our public areas, but after 6:30, you pick up your camp and you take it and you move and you relocate to another area. But then there's one last group, and that's the criminals that have tried to infiltrate our homeless organization. That's where accountability has to come in, Glenn. And that's where we need our police force. And again, the net can still help, because many of those criminals, once they figure out they're held accountable, they do start wanting to get services. So the net is a very, very excellent way. And it says a theory. No, it's a working model right now. This is what's going on. It's a wonderful thing that happens. And we've seen the community come together. This is our solution. Why is Vancouver different? Why are we better? Okay, let's just go ahead and I'm going to say it. Vancouver is better. Why? Because of the community. We are a community. We're not a bunch of factions that are sitting up. But when we come together to take care of a problem, we take care of it. And I'm honored to be here. And that is why one of the reasons I'm running. I want to maintain that. I want to exploit that. I want to distribute that whole idea of what real Vancouver is to maybe even to Portland. It might even be affected by it, up to Seattle if we need to, and let it go out so that we show them the way. And Vancouver leads the way in homeless, how to handle homeless. Vancouver leads the way in how to handle lawlessness. Vancouver leads the way in how to handle, criminal behavior. Vancouver leads the way in being compassionate to groups that have been marginalized in it. And that is one of the things that happens here. As I wanted to tell you, as for me, I'm only speaking for Rey Reynolds. And everything that I say right now has nothing to do with being the Vancouver Police Department or the City of Vancouver or any of that. That's my disclaimer. My opinions are mine and mine alone. But I can say that this department is one of the absolute best in the nation for trying to integrate the community into the Vancouver Police Department. We have what's called a NOW group. Now, I don't know if it's Neighbors on Watch. I used to be against it. As an officer, I was like, oh no, we're going to have all these civilians running around. The best thing that ever happened to us. These are some of the most dedicated professionals I've ever seen in my life. They come together. They've helped me on scenes when we've had an injured lady was down. The NOW people came up and they formed a circle around us. Again, community, Glenn. Do you understand that? Community. It is a fantastic thing. And that's what we've been having as part of our NOW volunteers. We integrate people from the community, Black, white, Asians, Hispanic. And our Latino groups here are fantastic. We are working together as a team. That's why I'm running, Glenn, to bring that unity together and a message of hope.
Well, I think that message of hope would resonate very well in Olympia, and we need that. And I think your opinions would be great, too. And there'd be Olympia definitely needs more people with a fish biologist background. If you ever look at some of the policies they have there.
I agree with that.
Thank you so much, Ray, for being willing to do this interview with me today and sharing your perspective with our listeners. And I really appreciate it. And tune in next time on We the Governed. And feel free to leave any comments you might have down below. Thank you so much for watching.